Hello, class. My name is Melissa Dalton, and I am the Public Outreach Coordinator for the Greene County Record Center and Archives. So today we're going to be learning about time capsules. So this program is called A Glimpse into the Past, using time capsules to learn about local history. And like I said, this program we're going to be discussing time capsules and what you can learn about your local community using these types of resources. But before we get into that, I want to know, have any of you heard of an archives? Do you know what it is? An archives is a repository for historical records. Now, this means that we hold and store and preserve historical records created by the various county departments. So maybe we might look at probate records, which would include wills and estates, which are records that document how somebody would like their property distributed after they pass away or what they want done with their property. Probate records also include marriages, adoption, early birth and death records. We also have clerk of court records, and those include things like divorce records, early naturalization, so how somebody became a citizen. We have criminal cases and civil disputes. We also have tax records, deeds and mortgage records, which document property ownership within the county. We have survey records, which would be property surveys and how a property is laid out or a piece of land or road is laid out. We have maps, and that's just a really small sampling of what we have. And our records actually date back to 1803. Can anyone tell the class what else or what was established in 1803? Actually, on March 1st, 1803, Ohio gained statehood. But do you know what else was established in 1803? Anyone want to take a guess? Greene County. Greene County was established in 1803, making it one of the oldest counties in Ohio. And it used to be one of the largest. When it was first established, it went all the way up to Lake Erie, and it wasn't until 1819 that it got its current borders. So today, we will be learning about time capsules and what sort of information you can learn about your community and its history using these documents and artifacts. Then, your class will be creating your very own time capsule. So, what is a time capsule? Do any of you know what it is or what it's used for? A time capsule is just a container that holds records or objects to show the culture of the day. And the intent is to inform future generations about the history of today. It's basically a snapshot of everyday culture and life of the day. So once the items are placed in the capsule, it's sealed and then deposited, placed in a special place. It could be a cornerstone of a new building. It could be in the ground if they're breaking ground for a new building or a new facility. Or it could just be on a shelf in a building. So although the time capsule itself can be anything, if you're going to be placing it long term, kind of like the ones we're going to talk about in a little bit, you usually want it to be made of steel. And you want to have a good seal so that objects inside are preserved and not exposed to any of the elements. So we don't want it exposed to water or air or dust and dirt. And then once it's placed, those involved in that process usually document when the capsule should be opened and also where it's located. So maybe they decide that it should be opened in 10 years, 25 years, 50 years, 100 years, maybe even 1,000 years. It really just depends on the situation. Now, the concept of time capsules has been around for a long time. And even though the actual term time capsules wasn't created or used until 1938, there are really a lot of examples throughout history. So here at Greene County, we have two time capsules. The first is from the 1901 Greene County Courthouse. So when the courthouse was designed, it was decided that a time capsule would be placed in the cornerstone of the building. The occasion was documented in the local newspaper, along with a description of the contents. The cornerstone and time capsule were placed on March 15, 1901, with a crowd of 5,000 people to celebrate the event. And then in 2001, to celebrate the centennial, so the 100th birthday of the courthouse, the Greene County Archives was asked to help commemorate the event. So the staff remembered hearing about a possible time capsule, and with the help of the County Services Department, they began looking for the capsule. It took a few days, but they found it, and it was cemented very well into the wall. And once they got it out, they actually decided to have a public meeting to open it. And so that public meeting was for the county commissioners on February 27th, 2001, and it was just a couple weeks shy of the 100-year anniversary. Now, the 1969 time capsule, which you'll see on the right, has a similar story. So when the jail was being designed to replace the old jail, which was built actually in 1860s, so it was already over 100 years old when they decided to replace it, it again was decided to put a time capsule in the cornerstone, and the location was actually clearly documented this time. There was a big celebration, big ceremony on June 21st, 1969, and it included many of your county officials. So your county officials are those who are elected into office. So your residents of the county voted them into office. And then 50 years later, at the exact same time and date, the Greene County Archives, along with the Sheriff's Office, opened the time capsule. And there were over 100 people who actually attended the live event, and we had thousands of people actually watch online. So with both time capsules, even though it was documented that each existed, locating them wasn't so easy. That's especially true of the 1901 courthouse time capsule. There wasn't really a clear indication as to where it was located, so they had a bit of trial and error to find it. And the removal itself was not an easy task. Here we actually have 3 images of the removal of the time capsule. So the first 2 show the hole in the wall the County Services Department had to create to actually get the time capsule out. And they used sledgehammers to break through the plaster and brick to get into the cornerstone for that. And then the last image is of our former archivist, Jillian Hill, removing the time capsule from the wall. The removal of the 1969 capsule was a little easier as they knew it was in the cornerstone, but where in the cornerstone was another question. In this instance, they realized it was a little higher and they cut the wall out below it. So if you look at that first photograph, you can see the time capsule and you're looking at it from the bottom. And obviously it's in there pretty good because it's not moving on its own. So that's cemented in that wall pretty good there. However, it was actually even harder to get it open. So we got here the first one where they got it out. Took a little bit of muscle, but they got it. And then you can see the second photograph, the one in the middle, is once they got it removed from the wall. And then that third photograph depicts our county services staff trying to get it open without harming or damaging any of the contents. So they're actually using a hand saw, but they actually ended up having to use an electric saw to get it open. So in both of these instances, the 1901 and 1969, they were boxes made of metal of some sort. So this one's a copper box, and that was welded shut to keep dirt, dust, water, and air from getting inside and harming the contents like we discussed earlier. So having that good seal on capsules like these is really important if you want those items to make it to their opening. Now that we know a little bit about what a time capsule is, let's discuss why they're important. So what do you think? What do you guys think makes a time capsule important? So take a few minutes to discuss the importance. You all probably came up with similar answers as us. We believe the time capsule can be a metaphor for our life. And what is a metaphor? A metaphor is just a word or phrase for one thing that is used to refer to another thing in order to show or suggests that they're similar. So it can be an object or an activity or an idea that we use as a symbol for something else. And that's really what a time capsule is. They provide an opportunity to think about the past in a different way, transporting us to a different place in time. And by doing so, we can learn what life was like for the people who created the time capsule. We can see how people and society have changed, or maybe in some instances, they haven't changed. The contents tell a story about the everyday life of the people, especially if the creators put a great deal of thought and effort into selecting their contents. And that is incredibly important. If we want future generations to fully understand what our lives were like, we have to be careful and selective about what we put into a time capsule. So here I wanted to show you guys some other examples outside of Greene County of time capsules. And this image is from the Helium Time Column Monument in Amarillo, Texas. This is a really neat time capsule, as there are 4 time capsule columns, as you can see in this photograph. And each did hold, books, artifacts, and documents that were supposed to demonstrate what life was like in 1968. So the first capsule was opened in 1993 after 25 years, and the second was opened in 2018 after 50 years. And at that opening, they actually asked former employees and people who worked in that field to contribute new artifacts to place back into the time capsule. So they actually put a new time capsule in when they removed it. Now there are also 2 other time capsules that were placed in 1968, and one is supposed to be opened in 100 years, and the other in 1,000 years. So today, we have created a packet of materials of examples of items from the Greene County time capsules. And we're going to be using these for the rest of the program. So I want you guys to go ahead and we're going to open those up in just a moment. We also have the contents of each time capsule on our Flickr page. And those are linked in the program overview. So if you can or you would like, we do encourage you to open up those links so you can see all of the items, like I said, because we're only using a small sampling, but you don't have to. We just wanted you to have that option if you choose to. So before we get started, let's break up into small groups, and then we'll look at these time capsule examples using the packet provided. So the first set we have is a small sampling of documents from the 1901 time capsule. I would like you to take about 5 to 10 minutes to review the items and take some notes about the following information, these following questions. So what do you notice about these items? What are their similarities? How are they different? What information are they telling the reader? What can you learn? Why are they important? And why do you think they included them? So these are questions that you actually have within your packet, so you can write down directly into your packet your answers. So for these, we've also provided transcripts. So those, since this is all in cursive, so if you have difficulty reading cursive, you can use those transcripts to figure out what they're written there, since it can be difficult to read it sometimes. So you just looked at examples from the senior and sophomore classes of Xenia High School. You also looked at an example from the Xenia Water Company. And you also saw a brief history and membership list from the Greene County Medical Society. So what did you notice about these examples? They're all histories of that particular group or organization. And each represents a different group of people and organizations from within the community. So why is that important? We can learn a great deal about that organization and their institution and how it developed or evolved over time. So do you know what an actual institution is? It's just a society or organization that's usually founded for religious, educational, social, or some other type of purpose. So maybe you can see patterns, or you can get an idea of what was important to each group. It also gives you a great glimpse into how these organizations formed within your community. And if they're no longer around, maybe it's an opportunity to do some research and learn why they're no longer there. Also, as we move forward in time, these types of documents become increasingly more important. These documents here were written almost 120 years ago, especially if we're talking about the 2021 school year. So much has changed since then. There isn't even a person alive that was there to witness the event. So this makes these items possibly some of the only surviving documents that were created by those involved. So that's something important to remember. And something I find really interesting, and maybe you will too, is let's look at one item in particular. Let's look at the Xenia Water Company. So when you read through that transcript, did you notice what the cost to build the Xenia Water Company was in 1887? Now, remember that it was able to hold 275,000 gallons of water. That's pretty big. But the cost was $200,000 in 1887. Today, that's the equivalent of roughly $5.7 million. That's a lot of money that they were putting into their water company, their waterworks back then. So that's just something to keep in mind as you look at these types of documents, just what you can learn by looking at them and what you can learn about what it cost and what was put into these organizations. Now let's take a look at some other examples from the 1901 time capsule. Again, take about 5 to 10 minutes to review these items and note the following. So these are the same types of questions. Again, they're in your packet. What do you notice about these? What are their similarities? What are the differences? Thinking about not only within this group, but also compared to the group before. What information are they conveying to the reader? What can you learn? Why are they important? And why do you think they were included? Again, take about 5 to 10 minutes again. In this selection of items, we have advertisements for local businesses and organizations, such as the Boots, Bales, and Conklin Stone business. There's also a calendar which doubles as an advertisement for the Avian Kazid Coal Company. There's a collage of photographs of the officers of the Bricklayer and Masons Independent Union. So that was a union that they obviously built using bricks and masonry. We have a class roll call for Xenia High School, one of the classes. There's a note about postage in 1901, so this is kind of interesting, as you can see how different postage was then, and also what the cost of postage was at that time as well. And it kind of gives you an idea of how much has changed when it comes to mailing something from 1901 to today. There's also an annual report from the Soldiers and Sailors Orphans Home in Greene County. Did anyone even know that there was an orphanage here in Greene County? It was actually an orphanage for children of former military members, and it was located on Home Avenue, Route 68 in Xenia, and today it actually is now the Legacy Center if you're familiar with Greene County. There's also a Grand Army of the Republic button, and that was used, that was an organization of Union Civil War veterans. There's also a medal from the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. So that actually is an organization that was kind of born out of the Grand Army of the Republic. It's made up of the sons of those veterans. We also have an image of the Cincinnati Enquirer from Saturday, February 23rd, 1901. And that kind of gives you an idea of what they were talking about in 1901, what the newspapers found relevant, what they found important to put in the newspaper to let their daily readers know. So although all of Greene County was able to contribute to this time capsule, most items came from Xenia Township. So you might have noticed that a lot of them were mostly Xenia. So these records provide the viewer with an idea of the businesses and organizations within the local community. So the newspaper, like I said, provides a glimpse into what was important to residents or what the news of the day was. The membership information can inform the viewer about who was living in the region, what their affiliation or their relationship with other churches and schools and businesses and organizations might have been at the time. Also, this information allows for a better understanding of just past generations and what they felt were and what they deemed important to them. Now let's look at some items from the 1969 Greene County jail time capsule. Again, we're going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to review these items. And again, I want you to take note of the following. These questions are a little bit different. They're still in your packet so that you can write down your answers there. So think about these questions. What's the first thing you notice about these items? How are these items similar to the 1901 time capsule? How are they different? Again, what information are they trying to convey to the viewer or the reader? How were these items used? What can you learn? Again, why are they important? And why do you think that they were included? So let's think about these questions after you've had some time to review these items. So what are the differences? What is different about the 1969 time capsule? How is it different from the 1901? First, it is focused on the jail, whereas with the 1901 time capsule, even though it was in the courthouse, they asked the community to contribute items. So you get more of a feel for the community at large with the 1901 time capsule. There's also, with the 1969, more artifacts, more advertising, and there's campaign and political materials. So those things that people who are running for office would put out for voters to see. If you look at the album on Flickr, you'll also see lots of photographs of the jail in its poor condition. Now, in your packet, you'll find a photograph and a badge of Omar Tate. He was the Greene County Sheriff from January 1927 through January 1931. There's also a badge of Sheriff Russell Bradley, who served in that same position, Greene County Sheriff, from 1957 through 1986. There's also a campaign nail file for Ray Durnball, who served as a county commissioner from 1961 through 1968. There is a holder for car title or registration with the clerk of court's face and name on it, who was Russell E. Gerhart, and he served as the clerk of court from 1953 through 1976. And there's a penny and a nickel from the 1960s. So they also included a history of the new jail, which talked about the campaign to raise the funds. And there was also a poem titled Our New Jail, written by Thomas Kelly, who was a member of the jail committee. So that was the group who was put together to help get the jail built. Lastly, there was a 1969 Greene County roadmap and an issue of the Fairborn Daily News from June 19th, 1969. So just a couple days before the time capsule was placed. So because of what is included, what did you learn that was different? What didn't you learn that you thought you would? For example, another thing to think about is, why do you think that they would include a nail file as part of campaign materials? What is it about a nail file that you would want to campaign on, use as your campaign material to give out to public people who you want to vote for you. Likely, they were hoping to get more women to vote for them, as the nail file was considered an item that women would use most frequently. So it gives you a little bit of a snapshot. Remember, like we said, a snapshot into the time and what was important to people. And again, there isn't anything from the community at large. So it is all really focused on the jail and those who were involved with the jail. So you don't learn much outside of your officials, your elected officials, the people you voted in that were voted into office. However, this information can provide some insight into the political environment of the time. So you kind of get a different feel for that political environment. So I wanted to include this because I thought it was kind of an interesting exercise, and I think you guys will maybe enjoy doing this as well. When they decided to place the 1901 time capsule, local students were asked to write what they thought life would be like 100 years later, 100 years from that time. And one of them was actually published in the local newspaper. So I want you guys to think about this as well. But I'm going to give you guys some milestones to think about. So I want you guys to read it theirs first. So go ahead and read through this. You don't have to read the whole thing. We did provide in your packet, you'll actually see their entire write-up about what they think life would be like. It's titled Looking Forward. But we bolded some text. And then if you have this printed in copy or packets in copy, or in color, in color, the bolded text is actually in red as well. So at least focus in on those highlighted sections. And then after reading what students in 1901 thought 2001 would look like, I want each group to think about what your life will be like at these following stages. So think about what you expect your life to be like, or society or culture to be like, when you graduate high school, when you turn 25, when you're 50, and then when you're 75. So take a few minutes and write down what you think will be different or the same at these milestones. How do you think everyday life will have changed? Are there things in society or culture that you think will be different? So take a few minutes and write this down, because we want you guys to have this so you can include it in your own time capsule. So now that you've looked at some examples from other time capsules, let's think about how we decide on what items to include in a time capsule. So this is really an important question, and the selection of items is crucial if we really want people in the future to understand what our lives are like today. So let's think about your daily life. And we got a bunch of questions for you guys to consider. So what are items that are important to you today? What are some items that will inform or tell the future about you and your life? What do these items do? Or what are their purpose? What can they tell the future generations? What kind of glimpse into our daily lives do they provide? What is it about our lives and culture that we want to convey to future generations? What do we want them to learn about it? Also, something to consider is when you're selecting items, will it require some sort of device or other media to view the material? So think about a flash drive or a DVD or some sort of video file. If you're going to put something like that into a time capsule today, what else should be included? Are you going to include instructions on how to view it? Are you going to include the material or the other media required to view it? So if you have a flash drive, are you going to tell them how they need to view it? Or maybe what's actually on it so that if they can't open it, they know what's on it. Or maybe you print examples that are on the flash drive. Those are just some things to think about. Also, we are living in some strange times, aren't we? We have something that has drastically altered our life recently. And what is that? The COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has altered every routine we have. Everyone's lives have changed in some way, shape, or form because of the pandemic. So thinking about that, what are things you might want to include? And why? What are some things that really highlight what's happening right now? And think about, why is it necessary that we include these items that document this change in our lives? Okay, now comes the fun part. Now that you've learned a bit about time capsules, you've seen examples that others have put into a time capsule, you've discussed what selection should be, now it's time for your group to decide what you should include in your class time capsule. So using those questions that were on the previous slide, we included those in your packet. I want you guys to take the next 10 to 15 minutes and discuss what you think you should include in your class time capsule as your group. So your teacher will decide how many items you guys can each include. And I want you guys to write down why your group has selected these items. Okay, and make sure that you also have on hand your little write-up about what you think life will be at those different milestones. Remember, when you graduate high school, when you're 25, when you're 50, when you're 75, because you want to include that as well. So once everyone has their items selected, they've come up with a plan, then each group will then present to the class what items they selected and why. And remember, you want to include stuff about the pandemic in too, okay? That's going to be important for future generations to understand what your life was like during a pandemic, okay? And then you get to create your time capsule. So have fun with it, be creative, and really think about your life as you're making these selections. We hope you've enjoyed this program and the opportunity to make your own time capsule. We hope you had a good time with it and kind of helped think about what your life is like and what's important to you and why it is important to you. And if you would like to learn about other programs we have available, please visit our website. We also post on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we complete a weekly blog post, all of which covers various topics on local history. And like I said earlier, the time capsule contents are all imaged on our Flickr page. But we also have other records that are up on that page, so you can take a look at some of the other types of records and documents we have available here at the archives. And we hope that you will take some time to look at those as well. Again, we hope you had a great time today learning about time capsules, and we hope you have a great day. Thank you.